I remember the exact moment she left. It wasn't a big fight. No screaming. No plates thrown against the wall. She just sat across from me at our kitchen table, the same table we'd bought together at a garage sale for $12, and she said, "I think I need more than this. More than us." Her name was Mia. And the more she was talking about had a name too. His name was Carter. Carter drove a Porsche. Carter had a penthouse. Carter wore watches that cost more than my car. And Carter, as I would come to find out 3 years later, was completely, catastrophically, spectacularly broke. But I'm getting ahead of myself. This is the story of how I lost the woman I loved to a man who had everything, and how I watched that everything disappear, piece by piece, while I quietly built a life he could never touch. Stay with me. Because this one takes time. But it's worth every minute. Mia and I met in college. Junior year. She was studying marketing, I was studying accounting, which, looking back, tells you everything you need to know about both of us. She was the kind of person who walked into a room and immediately made it warmer. Funny. Sharp. The kind of laugh that made strangers turn around and smile without knowing why. I was steady. Reliable. The guy who showed up. Always. We dated for 4 years. Moved in together after graduation. Talked about the future the way young people do, vaguely, optimistically, like it was just going to sort itself out. And for a while, it felt like it would. But then real life started. And real life, as it turns out, has a way of exposing cracks you didn't know were there. I was working entry-level at an accounting firm. Long hours. Average pay. The kind of job where you tell yourself it's temporary, that you're building towards something, but the building feels slow when the rent is due. Mia had started climbing faster. A job at a boutique marketing agency. Then a better one. Then better clients. She was good at what she did. Really good. And somewhere in the gap between her rising and me grinding, something shifted. She started talking about wanting to travel. About wanting experiences. About not wanting to just survive. I heard her. I really did. But I was focused on laying foundation. She was ready to build the penthouse. We weren't wrong. We were just different speeds. And then she met Carter. Carter came into Mia's life through a client event. He was a real estate developer, or at least, that's what he called himself. He had the look. The presence. The kind of confidence that comes from never having been told no. She mentioned him once, casually. Met this interesting guy at the Hartwell event. I didn't think much of it. Then she mentioned him again. And again. And then one Sunday morning, she sat across from me at that $12 table and said the words I just told you. I need more than this. I asked her if it was about Carter. She didn't say yes. But she didn't say no. She moved out within 2 weeks. Took the things that were hers, left the things that were mine, and walked into whatever Carter was offering. I won't pretend I handled it well. I didn't sleep properly for 3 months. I lost 8 pounds without trying. I called her twice, both times embarrassing, neither time productive. My best friend Marcus sat with me one night, 2 months after she left, and said something I've never forgotten. He said, "Stop watching her movie. Go make your own." So I did. Or at least I tried. I threw myself into work. Started studying for additional certifications. Moved into a smaller apartment to save money aggressively. Stopped checking her social media mostly. Because here's the thing about heartbreak. It doesn't kill you. But it does clarify things. And what became very clear to me, in those long quiet nights alone, was that I had been playing small. Not because I lacked ability but because I lacked urgency. Mia leaving gave me urgency. Carter, without knowing it, did me a favor. The next 2 years were the hardest I've ever worked. I passed my CPA exam on the first attempt. I started taking on freelance financial consulting on weekends, small businesses, startups, anyone who needed someone who understood numbers. One of those clients was a small tech company run by two brothers in their late 20s. They had a product. They had users. They had absolutely no idea how to manage their finances. I helped them restructure. Helped them prepare for a funding round. Stayed late. Answered calls on weekends. When they closed their Series A $4.2 million, they offered me a full-time role as their head of finance. I was 31 years old. I said yes before they finished the sentence. The salary was more than I'd ever made. The equity was something I'd never had before. The work was harder than anything I'd done, but it was mine. Real. Meaningful. I moved into a better apartment. Bought a car that didn't make sounds it shouldn't. Started saving, investing, building. Meanwhile, and I only know this because mutual friends talk, Carter and Mia were living large. Dinners at places I'd never been. Trips to places I'd never gone. Photos that looked like a life designed to be photographed. I won't lie to you. There were moments it stung. But I kept going. Because here's what I understood that she didn't: not yet. Wealth that's performed is fragile. Wealth that's built is quiet. And Carter's wealth was very, very loud. I first heard something was wrong with Carter through Marcus, who knew someone who worked adjacent to Carter's world. Apparently he's been missing payments on 2 of his properties, Marcus told me over lunch one afternoon. I didn't react. Filed it away. Then I heard he'd lost a major development deal, a city contract that had apparently been the foundation of several other deals. When it fell through, it was like pulling a thread on a sweater. Everything connected to everything. Over the following months, the picture became clearer. Carter had been over-leveraged for years. In real estate development, that's not unusual, but there's a difference between calculated risk and reckless exposure. Carter had confused confidence with competence. He'd borrowed heavily against properties that hadn't appreciated the way he'd projected. He had investors who were starting to ask uncomfortable questions. He had a lifestyle: the Porsche, the penthouse, the dinners that he'd been funding not from profit, but from debt. The Porsche went first. Then the penthouse. He moved into a rental, a nice one, but a rental. Then the lawsuits started. 2 investors filed civil suits alleging misrepresentation of returns. A contractor filed for unpaid work on a development that had stalled. Carter went from being the man with everything to being a man managing damage. And Mia, from what I heard, and again, mutual friends talk, things had been strained between them for months before the money disappeared. Apparently, Carter under pressure was not Carter at the client event. The charm curdled. The confidence became irritability. The lifestyle became a source of stress rather than joy. She left him. Quietly. With far less drama than she'd left me. I heard about it on a Wednesday. I was at my desk reviewing financials for our upcoming Series B. I sat with it for a minute. And then I went back to work. 3 years and 4 months after Mia sat across from me at that $12 table, she called. I almost didn't answer. Not out of spite. Just. I almost didn't recognize the number. She'd gotten a new phone at some point. But I answered. She sounded like herself. That was the first thing I noticed. Not performing. Not polished. Just, her. She said she wasn't calling to restart anything. She wanted me to know that. She said she was calling because she'd been doing a lot of thinking. About choices. About what she'd valued at 26 versus what she valued now. About the difference between what looks like security and what actually is security. She said, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember it word for word, that she'd mistaken acceleration for direction. That Carter had seemed like momentum, but he was actually just speed with no destination. She apologized. Not dramatically. Just cleanly. Sincerely. I told her I appreciated it. And then I asked how she was doing. Really doing. She laughed a little, that laugh, still the same, and said she was figuring it out. New job. New city. Smaller life, but a realier one. We talked for 40 minutes. At the end, she said, "You seem good." Like, really good. I told her I was. And for the first time in a long time, maybe the first time ever, I meant it without any performance behind it. We hung up. I sat in my car. Funny how these things happen in cars, and I thought about everything. About the table. About the night she left. About Marcus telling me to make my own movie, and I thought about Carter. About how he'd had everything I thought I wanted. And how he'd lost it. Not because the universe punished him, but because what he built wasn't real. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt something quieter than that. Grateful, maybe. For the path that looked like loss but turned out to be direction. So where does that leave us? The tech company I joined went on to raise a Series B 18 months after I came aboard. I won't share the number, but I will say, the equity conversation I had at 31 looks very different at 34. I bought a home. Not to perform anything. Not to post about it. Just, because I wanted somewhere that was mine. Quiet street. Good light in the mornings. A kitchen table I bought new, which felt like a small kind of poetry. Mia, from what I understand, is doing well. She built something real, a small brand consulting practice, clients she actually likes, a life that fits her. We're not close. But we're not strangers either. She wished me happy birthday last year. I replied. That felt like enough. Carter, last I heard, is working in sales somewhere. Not property development. Something smaller. Whether he's learned anything, I genuinely don't know. I hope he has. I don't mean that sarcastically. Bitterness, I've come to understand, is just grief that forgot to move forward. And Marcus, my best friend who told me to make my own movie, is the godfather of my nephew, because some relationships outlast everything. The life I have now is not the life I pictured at 26. It's better. Not because I won something, but because losing something forced me to understand what I was actually building toward. And I built it. Quietly. Consistently. Without an audience. That turns out to be the only way anything real gets made. People always want to know if I'm glad she left. It's a complicated question. I loved her. That was real. The loss was real. The pain was real. But so was everything that came after. Here's what I know now that I didn't know then: the people who leave you for something shinier are not villains. They're just people who haven't learned yet that shine fades. The people who seem to have everything, the cars, the penthouses, the confidence, aren't always building. Sometimes they're just spending. And you grinding quietly, learning, saving, building something no one can see, yet you are not losing. You are becoming. It doesn't always look like a win in the moment. In fact, it almost never does. But if you stay consistent, stay honest, stay focused on what's real, the story has a way of correcting itself. It did for me. And if you're sitting somewhere right now feeling like you're on the wrong side of someone else's highlight reel, keep going. Your chapter isn't over. It's just getting started. Thank you for spending an hour with me today. If this story meant something to you, drop a comment. Tell me where you are in your own story, and if you haven't subscribed yet, I'll be here every week with more stories just like this one. Take care of yourself. Seriously. Because no one is coming to save you, but you've got everything you need.